The stars stretched endlessly beyond the viewport, each one a frozen ember of possibility. Fleet Captain Arya Kale stood with her hands clasped behind her back, her reflection caught against the void. She was not a woman given to easy sentiment, but every time she stared out into that glittering abyss, she felt the pull of something larger than duty, larger than herself. A sense that humanity had only just begun to scratch the surface of what the galaxy demanded of it. The bridge hummed with quiet efficiency. Officers murmured to one another, a steady rhythm of clipped reports and rapid calculations. Unlike the alien vessels Arya had seen at diplomatic assemblies, there was no ritualized formality here, no stiff recitations of hierarchy. The crew of the Resolute worked like a living organism, flexible, adaptive, imperfect, but alive. Their diversity was their strength, a collage of cultures and temperaments stitched together by a shared hunger to see what lay beyond the maps. "Captain," Lieutenant Vela called from her station, eyes sharp against the glow of her console. No response from Eden's reach. We repeated hails for 3 hours across all bands. Arya did not move. The silence was already answer enough. Eden's reach had been thriving. A colony of 50,000 souls. A proof of concept that humans could tame not just barren rock, but a world once dismissed by the elder species as uninhabitable. Its silence now was a void that pressed against the mind. "Take us into orbit," she ordered. Her voice carried no tremor, though her chest felt tight. As the planet swam into view, a hush fell over the bridge. The lush greens and sparkling oceans that should have greeted them were scarred. Dark burns stretched across continents in jagged patterns, as though the world itself had been clawed open. Whole cities lay blackened, not crumbled in the way of bombardment, but melted, reshaped by heat so intense it erased architecture in sweeping strokes. Lieutenant Vela whispered, This doesn't match any known weapon signature." Arya drew in a breath, forcing herself to look without flinching. "Launch reconnaissance drones. Wide pattern. I want every centimeter of surface analyzed." The drones spilled from the hangars like sparks, their feeds streaming back to the bridge. Image after image revealed devastation, systematic and merciless. No corpses remained, no ships, no trace of life. The colony had not been conquered or enslaved. It had been erased. A low curse slipped from Commander Jornhale, her second in command. He was a man who thrived in chaos, irreverent to the point of insubordination, but in this moment his bravado faltered. "Who the hell does this, Captain? Even the Varati wouldn't waste resources like this. They'd leave something." Arya turned to him. "That's exactly what unsettles me. Whoever did this wasn't interested in conquest. This was sterilization." The word hung in the air, heavy and irrevocable. The crew shifted uneasily. The kind of silence that grew when people wanted to speak, but knew there was nothing to say. Arya tapped her console, recording her initial report to the council. The aliens who sat in their polished halls would dismiss it, she knew. To them, humanity's perception of danger was always dramatized, a symptom of their short history and volatile temperaments. Yet she could not dilute the truth. Something unknown had struck at them, something so thorough it defied even alien comprehension. She cut the recording short. Words could not capture what she felt. The sense of predator in the dark, unseen but already near. Jorn broke the silence. "You think the council's going to listen this time?" "They'll listen," Arya said. "Whether they believe is another matter." Her officers glanced at one another, reading in her calm tone the undercurrent of frustration. The older species dismissed humans as reckless and untempered. They could not see that adaptability was not recklessness. It was survival. And survival, Arya thought grimly, might be the only currency left for them all. A sudden alert drew their attention. One of the drone's feeds showed something unusual, a pattern etched into the melted ruins of the colony's capital. At first it looked random, twisted arcs and gouges, but as the image clarified, it became deliberate. Not words, not symbols, but the unmistakable repetition of intent. Arya leaned closer, her voice quiet but steady. "That isn't destruction. That's communication." The bridge crew stared, unsettled. Communication meant intelligence. Intelligence meant intent. And intent meant that this was not the act of a storm or accident, but of an enemy. The captain straightened, Her features schooled into composure, though her mind raced ahead. The galaxy was vast, but the rules of conflict were familiar. Enemies conquered, enslaved, extracted. This was something else. This was erasure followed by a message written in fire across a human world. She looked around at her crew, fear on their faces, but also defiance. That defiance mattered. It was a human spark, the refusal to be cowed even when the abyss stared back. "Record everything," she said, her voice gaining steel. "Send it to the Council, and prepare the fleet for contact drills. Whatever did this may still be near." The stars outside glittered with deceptive calm, but Arya felt the weight of silence pressing in, heavier than any enemy fleet. Humanity had been noticed, and whoever had noticed them had not come to negotiate. She remained by the viewport long after the orders were carried out, eyes fixed on the scarred planet below. She felt the shape of the conflict before it fully formed. The inevitability of confrontation was something the rest of the galaxy did not yet understand. It was not reassurance she sought in that moment, but clarity. Humanity had been underestimated since the day they left their cradle. That underestimation was about to end, and when it did, she vowed the galaxy would learn that fragility was not weakness. Fragility was fire waiting for fuel. "Would you like me to continue directly into Section 2 in the same style, almost equals 1,000 words, so the flow feels like a novel, or do you prefer I stop after each section so you can review and guide the pacing?" The council chamber was a cathedral of glass and metal suspended above the galactic capital, its high dome casting fractured light upon the delegates of a dozen ancient species. Arya stood in the center of the ring, her image projected in real time from the Resolute. She kept her voice even, her report precise, each word hammered into place with deliberate control. The images of Eden's Reach, scorched continents, melted cities, the haunting symbols etched into ruin, played behind her like a grim theater. When she finished, silence followed. Then came the measured tones of Counselor Vor, a reptilian dignitary, whose people prided themselves on centuries of unbroken order. "Your species has a tendency to dramatize its misfortunes, Captain Kale. The absence of survivors is regrettable, but hardly unprecedented. Pirate fleets, insurgent cells, even your own human factions. Any could be responsible." The dismissal stung, though Arya expected it. She glanced around the chamber, at faces carved by centuries of certainty. These were civilizations that had mapped the galaxy long before humans crawled beyond their cradle. They trusted patterns, precedent, the stability of their own long memories. What she had shown them fit, nothing they understood, so they denied it. She forced a reply through tightened breath. "With respect, Counselor, pirates don't leave precision glyphs carved into planetary crust. Nor do insurgents erase every trace of life without harvesting resources. This was not war as you know it. It was extermination." Murmurs rippled through the chamber, though most eyes returned to indifference. A few delegates exchanged uneasy glances, but none voiced agreement. The chair ended the session with a shallow courtesy, promising to monitor the matter closely. The projection cut out, leaving Arya staring at the empty space where their faces had been. Jordan Hale folded his arms as he leaned against a railing on the bridge. That went about as well as lighting yourself on fire and asking for applause. Arya allowed herself a tight smile. They don't believe because they don't want to. Belief would demand action, and action would mean admitting their structures can't protect them. Before Hale could reply, an alarm cut across the bridge. Sensor Officer Vela's voice sharpened into focus. Multiple contacts at the edge of the system. Vectoring in fast. Configuration unknown. The crew snapped into motion. Displays filled with shifting icons, erratic trajectories converging like a tightening net. Arya strode to the central console. "Bring us to battle readiness. Form defensive screen with the Vanguard and EOS. No assumptions until we know what we're facing." The unknowns burst into range, and the first images froze the bridge in a collective breath. The ships were grotesque parodies of life. Hulls fused with organic curvature, plated over by gleaming metallic growths. They pulsed faintly as though alive. No two vessels were alike. Each a warped shape grown rather than constructed, their movements eerily synchronized. "Are those ships?" Vela whispered. "Ships don't grow. Hale muttered, though his hand tightened on the railing. The swarm moved without hesitation, weapons fire cutting through the void. Beams lanced toward the Resolute, scattering across her shields with jarring force. The human fleet responded, coordinated fire illuminating the darkness with streaks of plasma and rail shot. At first, the tactics held, until the swarm adapted. Arya watched in chilling clarity as enemy ships shifted mid-battle, their hulls extruding new armor, their energy signatures bending in response to human weaponry. Each salvo became less effective. Each maneuver countered more swiftly. "They're learning," she said softly. "Every second we fight, they become stronger." Hale cursed under his breath. "Then we need to give them something worth choking on." Arya's mind raced. Every doctrine, every training simulation, every neat column of probabilities failed under the weight of an opponent that grew sharper with each exchange. Logic dictated retreat. Predictability meant death. That left only one path. "Helm," she snapped. "Plot a collision course between our formation and their core mass. Break pattern on my mark." Every ship improvises. No coordination, no predictability. Confuse their models. There was hesitation. The order ran against every principle of fleet command. But hesitation could kill faster than enemy fire. The acknowledgement came crisp, and human ships broke into erratic spirals, weaving in and out of enemy vectors with reckless daring. The swarm faltered. For a moment, their synchronized unity fractured as human unpredictability shredded their algorithms. Arya seized the opening, driving the Resolute through a gap that should not have existed, unleashing point-blank fire that gutted an enemy vessel. The fleet followed, each captain throwing aside rehearsed maneuvers in favor of instinct, improvisation, and desperate creativity. The battlefield dissolved into chaos, but it was human chaos, and against it the swarm staggered. After what felt like an eternity, the surviving enemy vessels retreated, vanishing into folds of dark space. Silence descended over the bridge, the crew staring at the wreckage floating among the stars. The cost had been heavy. 2 human ships lost, dozens of lives scattered into the void. But they had survived. More than that, they had forced the impossible. They had pushed back something designed to adapt faster than any foe should. Hale broke the quiet with a rough laugh, incredulous and breathless. "We just out-chaosed a monster machine hive. Tell me that's not the most human thing we've ever done." Arya didn't answer. Her gaze remained fixed on the black where the swarm had vanished, her mind replaying the way they had shifted, learned, grown. They would be back, stronger than before, evolving on the bones of this failure. The next battle would demand more than reckless courage. But for the first time since Eden's Reach, she felt something other than dread. Humanity had been underestimated because they were messy, unpredictable, incapable of fitting into neat alien categories. Tonight, that very flaw had saved them. She turned from a viewport to her crew, their faces pale but burning with fierce light. "Record everything. Send the battle data to the Council. Let them see what we faced, and let them see who stood against it." The words were calm, but beneath them surged a fire she could not hide. They had glimpsed the abyss, and the abyss had flinched. "For now, would you like me to carry the same focus style into Section 3, or would you prefer to pause here so you can fine-tune characters and pace them before I continue?" The War Council met in shadows, their faces dimly lit by holographic projections of the star system where humanity intended to make it stand. The air hung heavy with tension, the elder species shifting uneasily as if proximity to the humans made them restless. For centuries, these civilizations had believed their traditions unbreakable, their ways unassailable. Now, forced to listen to those they had once dismissed as reckless children, they struggled between pride and fear. Arya stood at the center, her uniform still scorched from the last engagement. She had not taken the time to polish her image for the Council. She wanted them to see the truth. Humanity was bloodied, scarred, but unbroken. Her voice was calm, carrying the weight of both command and conviction. "You've seen the swarm yourselves. You know now what we face. Their strength is not in firepower. It's in their certainty. They adapt to everything predictable. That's why they routed your fleets. That's why we survived. Because we don't fight like you do." A murmur rippled through the chamber, some in agreement, others recoiling at the bluntness. One of the delegates, an ancient being with crystalline skin, leaned forward. "And you expect us to hand command to your kind? To stake the survival of the galaxy on chaos?" Aria's gaze held steady. "Not chaos. Adaptability. Risk. Imagination. The swarm cannot anticipate what it cannot calculate. And if we fail to fight on those terms, we all vanish. Your civilizations, your legacies, every trace of who we are. Humanity doesn't seek to lead. We seek to survive. But if you stand with us, we can do more than survive." The chamber fell quiet. Pride wore with pragmatism, but the truth was undeniable. At last, one by one, the delegations gave their assent. Not willingly, but desperately. The joint fleet was born under human command. Days later, the stars above a dying sun burned with eerie brilliance. The system's primary star trembled on the edge of collapse, its unstable pulses lighting the darkness with violent flares. This was where Aria had chosen to fight. The swarm would come in force, eager to consume both the fleet and the unstable system. And it was here that she would gamble everything. The bridge of the Resolute thrummed with energy as the Allied armada formed a precarious wall across the system's edge. Dozens of ships, alien and human, arrayed together in a fragile unity. Some of the alien commanders had already expressed doubt, questioning whether humanity's recklessness would drag them into annihilation. Aria welcomed their doubt. She needed them to underestimate her still. It gave her room to maneuver. The swarm came like a tide. Ships poured from the darkness, their grotesque forms shifting, adapting even before the first salvo fired. The Allied line shuddered as weapons struck, shields flaring, hulls cracking. Alien formations began to falter, commanders clinging to the strategies they had trusted for centuries. The swarm learned swiftly, pressing in. Aria gave the order without hesitation. All human vessels, break formation, improvise, scatter and draw them in. The human ships peeled away, their paths unpredictable, weaving through the battlefield with reckless abandon. The swarm faltered again, struggling to adjust, its cohesion fracturing the storm of unexpected maneuvers. The aliens stared in disbelief as what looked like retreat turned into a lure. "Helm," Aria commanded, her voice steady even as the deck shuddered under impact. "Bring us closer to the star's unstable corona." The risk was monumental. The star seethed, unstable energy tearing through space like a wounded beast. To fight here was madness. To fight here was exactly why they might win. Human ingenuity had crafted a trap. Reactor surges, precision strikes, and gravitation manipulation designed to push the swarm into the star's death throes. It required flawless improvisation, a willingness to sacrifice, and the courage to see it through. Hale's voice broke through the chaos, rough but steady. "We're threading a needle through hellfire, Captain." Aria's reply came without hesitation. "Then let's make sure the swarm burns first." The Allied fleet bent under the strain, but gradually the pattern emerged. Human unpredictability, paired with alien firepower, drove the swarm deeper toward the star. One by one, ships overloaded their reactors, detonating in brilliant bursts that nudged enemy formations off balance. The star itself began to writhe, pulled toward collapse by carefully orchestrated chaos. The swarm, relentless and unyielding, pressed forward into the trap. When the moment came, Aria stood tall, her voice ringing clear. "Now, trigger the cascade." Energy surged. Reactors linked in sequence detonated, their combined force pushing the unstable star beyond its threshold. For an instant, the universe held its breath. Then the star ignited in fury, a colossal flare consuming the swarm in white fire. Their grotesque vessels writhed and melted, caught in the unstoppable storm. On the bridge of the Resolute, the crew watched in silence as the star's light swallowed the darkness. The swarm was gone, annihilated by the gamble only humans would dare attempt. The cost had been devastating. Ships lost, lives spent like kindling, but the galaxy still stood. When the echoes faded, the surviving fleet gathered in the quiet aftermath. Alien commanders, once dismissive, now turned their eyes at Aria with something unfamiliar, respect tinged with awe. Humanity had not only survived, they had led. Arya's voice, low and steady, carried across the comms. We are fragile. We bleed, we falter, we doubt. But we also imagine, and that is something no enemy can adapt against. Where others see limits, we see possibility. That is why we endure. The words hung in the silence, seeding something new among the weary survivors. The war was not over. An enemy capable of adaptation might rise again. But the galaxy had seen humanity's answer, and it was fire. Arya turned from the viewport, the light of the dying star casting her face in gold and shadow. The battle was won, but the war for survival had only begun, and she knew with certainty that humanity would no longer be dismissed. They had stepped out from the shadow of older civilizations, carrying with them the gift and burden of their nature. The stars beyond still waited, vast and unknowable. Somewhere in that endless darkness, new threats would gather. Arya felt the weight of it pressing forward, not as dread, but as promise. Humanity had been tested, and they had answered. Would you like me to now expand all 3 sections into one seamless, novel-like draft, 3,000 words, so it reads as a continuous story, or do you prefer to keep each section distinct for now? The fleet limped back from the dying star, its survivors fractured and raw. Wreckage still clung to the void, drifting reminders of ships that had given everything in the desperate gambit. For the moment, there was victory. Fragile, imperfect, purchased with sacrifice. Yet on the bridge of the Resolute, Captain Arya Kale felt the uneasy silence pressing against her ribs. Victory was not the same as peace. In the galaxy's long history, peace had never endured. The council reconvened, their delegates filling the chamber once more, but the tone was different now. Gone was the air of dismissal, the quiet arrogance of civilizations who believed themselves eternal. The swarm's destruction had shaken them, and the weight of humanity's reckless triumph hung over the assembly like a storm cloud. Some spoke with reverence, others with resentment, but none could ignore what had been proven. Counselor Vor's reptilian features tightened as he addressed her directly. You would have us believe this outcome secures our future. Yet the swore was destroyed by chance, by risking collapse upon ourselves. What happens when chaos no longer saves you? Arya held his gaze. She did not need to raise her voice. The calm of her words carried sharper steel than anger. It was not chance. It was choice. We took risks you would not, because we understood that survival sometimes requires the embrace of uncertainty. That is humanity's strength, not chaos, but the courage to act when certainty is impossible. The chamber stirred uneasily. Some delegates nodded, but others whispered dissent. Arya recognized the seeds of a new conflict forming. Humanity's triumph had not elevated them to equality. It had made them a force others feared. Fear, she knew, was as dangerous as the swarm had been. Later, alone in her quarters, Arya sat in silence. Reports scrolled across her desk. Casualty lists, sensor fragments, analyses of the swarm's adaptive nature. Even in death, the enemy lingered in questions. Had they destroyed the hive entirely, or merely a fragment of something vaster, waiting in the dark? Her instincts told her the latter. No intelligence capable of such relentless evolution would gamble everything on one strike. Somewhere, beyond the horizon of mapped stars, pieces of the swarm must endure. The thought gnawed at her. Humanity had earned recognition, but recognition came with burden. Already her people were being painted as reckless saviors, as dangerous leaders who courted destruction for the sake of triumph. If the swarm returned, and she believed they would, the galaxy might not unite again so readily. She would need to prepare humanity not just for another war, but for the suspicion and resistance of allies who might turn to fear before trust. Joran Hale entered without ceremony, dropping heavily into the seat across from her. He had the look of a man carrying too many ghosts, but his grin flickered anyway. You're brooding, Captain. Dangerous habit. She allowed herself the faintest smile. Brooding keeps me from believing we've already won, and it reminds me that the next fight will be harder. Hale leaned back, studying her. You think the swarm's not finished. I think what we destroyed was only one voice in a choir we can't yet hear. Her tone was quiet, but conviction sharpened each word. And when that choir sings, it won't be just humanity they test. It will be the galaxy itself. For once, Hale did not joke. His grin faded, replaced by something sober, almost reverent. Then we'd better make sure the galaxy is ready to sing with us, not against us. Their words settled into silence. Outside the viewport, the stars shimmered with deceptive calm. They were beautiful, but beauty did not disguise danger. Humanity had stepped into the light, no longer overlooked, no longer underestimated. That was a triumph, but also a warning. In the days that followed, Arya threw herself into preparation. The fleet rebuilt, restructured, retrained. Alien commanders watched closely, some learning from humanity's improvisation, others studying it as though it were a weapon to be feared more than emulated. Arya felt their eyes on her, wherever she walked, admiration laced with suspicion. Humanity had become indispensable, but in being indispensable, they had also become threatening. She understood the paradox. Leadership was never given freely. It was taken and then contested. Humanity had taken it through fire and sacrifice, but whether the galaxy would let them keep it was uncertain. On the observation deck, as the Resolute prepared for its next voyage, Arya stood with her crew. They had lost comrades, but what remained between them was stronger than grief. It was purpose forged in survival. Vela spoke quietly, her voice carrying the weight of unasked questions. "Do you think they'll ever trust us, Captain?" Arya looked out into the stars, her reflection merging with the void. Trust is a luxury. Respect is enough. If they fear us, so be it. What matters is that when the swarm, or whatever comes next, returns, they'll remember who stood when no one else would. The crew absorbed her words in silence, their gazes fixed on the infinite night. Each of them knew the truth she had not spoken, that survival was only the beginning. The real conflict was yet to come, not only against enemies beyond the stars, but against doubt, division, and fear within the fragile alliance they had forged. Arya drew a steady breath. The path ahead was perilous, but humanity had never been strangers to peril. Fragility had always been their nature, but it was fragility that forced them to adapt, to imagine, to endure. And now, as guardians of the galaxy that had once dismissed them, they would need that endurance more than ever. The Resolute turned slowly toward the uncharted dark, engines flaring with quiet defiance. The war was not over, nor the story complete. Humanity's place among the stars had only just begun to be written. Would you like me to continue building additional sections beyond 4, shifting into a broader arc, political intrigue, alien distrust, or the swarm's deeper origins? Or should I stop here and help you refine this as a self-contained novella-length structure?